It's still a few seconds. All right, so we are live. Okay, so thanks for everybody joining us today. I'm Jason Ruiz. I'm a reporter with the Long Beach Post, and today we'll be joined by the chair of the Independent Long Beach Redistricting Commission, Alejandra, who just dropped off the call, and Paul Mitchell, the owner of Redistricting Partners. He's the vendor that's working with the city. They're also working with other cities up and down the state, like Los Angeles, Berkeley, San Jose, and other counties. You mentioned that you're trying to secure a contract with New York, so lots of experience on your end, Paul.
Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And Alejandra's back.
She is.
Okay, so you guys are haven't started the actual redistricting process yet, and people still have the opportunity to get involved. I don't know who wants to maybe take the lead on this, but can you kind of explain what the job is that you guys have laying before you in the next few months and why it's important?
Chairwoman, do you want to go first, and I can support you in it?
Sure. Yeah, I apologize about that weird glitch. It just kicked me off. But yeah, obviously, we're here to draw new lines for the districts in Long Beach, and redistricting is just such an important task. It's something that has long-term consequences. It's something that we will live with for a decade. And so this process of adjusting district lines to the new census information that we receive, and according to the community of interest information that we receive from the public, it's really imperative so that we can hopefully help create districts that will empower its residents to, seek the representation that they deserve and that they want. And so it's a really important process, and making sure that people have fair and just representation. So again, redistricting is just really important. It's something that again will have a lasting impact. So that's the task at hand, which is pretty big.
Right. And if you're like, I would say most people, or if not a lot, maybe not most, but these are the districts behind me here in this nice virtual background that currently are, determine who your city council person is, what year you might get to vote. I mean, with these district lines changing, and we don't know how dramatic the changes are going to be, but possibly somebody that was supposed to vote in next year's city council races might have to wait until 2024 because the lines moved and now they're voting for a different council person. One thing, and I'll ask Paul about this, the holdup, there's going to be a time crunch factor here because of COVID, and that held up the census process, which you guys can't draw lines without census data. And currently, the city is expecting to get those numbers in late September. However, I did see that over the weekend that California Redistricting put out a statement saying that the data is now expected to be dropped mid-August. It still has to take about 4 weeks, right? About a month until they're released to the cities. What kind of impact could that have on when Long Beach gets its numbers, Paul?
Well, first off, you're right. COVID and the delays in the census, some of which are COVID related and others are like census administration related. And we could do a whole different session on that. Those have delayed everything. This commission got seated starting in December. They started having meetings in January, and we were still at that point, presumably 10 months off from being able to draw lines. So it definitely has impacted a lot of the process. Right now, the way the deadlines work, the census is going to be releasing something called the legacy files from the 2020 census on August 12th. Legacy files is just kind of a new term they came up with. to describe census data that isn't put into all the exact tables and formats as the final decennial census, but has all the numbers. So the state has made a decision to use that data, and the statewide database up at UC Berkeley will be working with that data to do two things. First, they're going to organize it properly so that any local government can have access to updated numbers for their population, and some agencies could actually start redistricting. Cities and counties, though, and the state need to wait.
Right.
We need to wait for prison population adjusted data, where they're taking population, about 120,000 people that are currently in state facilities, state-run institutions, and take them out of the census blocks where they're currently in, redistribute them around the state. Their current deadline, they said, for that would be September 23rd. Given that the data is coming about 4 days early, maybe we could assume that'll be September 19th or so, but the commission is planning based on that September 23rd date.
Okay.
There's one other delay, believe it or not, that after we get that data, we also have to wait 21 days before the commission can start drawing lines. This window, this 3-week window, is really critical because it allows the community to have a head start on the commission.
Right.
So before the chairwoman can start suggesting lines or saying how she wants districts drawn, Common Cause can do that. The local neighborhood association can do that. Other advocacy groups can get ahead of the process. And that really is indicative of this new wave in redistricting, where we're building districts from communities up, where we're trying to get public engagement, and where we're not doing what was done, historically in this country for 200 years of redistricting being the art of people in back rooms, with cigars, trying to figure it out what works for them. This is about what works for the community.
Right. And to that point, you guys have been over 2/3 of the way through at this point, through community of interest outreach meetings. You have one coming up on Wednesday night at Houghton Park in North Long Beach. And then I think you guys announced the 4th district meeting, which is the last one. Do you what's the facility that's going to be held at? Either of you guys? I can look it up.
While you're talking, I can look and see if I can find the location.
So an important part of this outreach that you guys are doing for communities of interest, and I got my little props here. So you guys have been giving out maps. That's not working because of my virtual background, but you have physical versions for people who are like myself, not very good at using computers. So you basically you have this map, you have these maps, right? And based on the meetings that we've all attended, people are upset with these current lines for a variety of reasons. And the community of outreach process is an opportunity for people to come out and share with the chair and the rest of the commissioners of why they think certain communities should be kept together or reunited or separated based on, the community of interest definition in so many words is, cultural, socioeconomic, maybe it's a neighborhood associations that work together, or people who just want to have a certain council person be their council person. It could be a variety of things, and you guys are accepting all applications. You guys, you don't have to go into the details of what you guys have received already, but how important is that input, Alejandra, for the commission to know what people want to see when you guys start drawing these lines?
Yeah, before I answer, I'll just answer the previous one. I noticed I was on mute. That would be the next meeting for District 4 will be at Browning High School, and that will be at 6:30. So yeah, it's very important to us that we hear from community of interest and that they inform us of communities that we might not be aware of. So something like you said, I can't go into depth about all the different that we've received, but there's been definitely some recurring ones, right? Like there's the airport affected community, right? So it's a community that's been very vocal. We have the Cambodian population that has been pretty vocal as well. And there's others that, have pointed out to us that the neighborhoods that have been identified by the city may not match the neighborhood names or locations that they feel are more accurate. So it's important to get that feedback from our residents and people that are, boots to the ground and know what's going on and know the different communities that we should be keeping in mind that, we might not as a commission or as city staff. And so it's really, really important that we hear from them. And like you said, the definition is pretty generic in that it does, just specify common social, economic, cultural, different interest ties. But that I think is very intentional, and it allows for a lot of people to speak up and share, their concerns or again their community that they feel should be considered in our work.
Right.
So one of the things you mentioned was maybe, Alejandra, you can't tell him every testimony we received, but there are 9 pages of community of interest testimony that have been sent into the commission that anybody in the public can go look through. So those are on the commission's website. And you can just go in, look at the worksheet. You could even search in the worksheet. I just searched for LGBTQ and found a number of submissions people were doing based on that community of interest. You could look at other communities that have put in those testimony, and we're starting to get in maps too, maps of communities of interest that people use with the online tool that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, that's actually a great transition, Paul. So the website that Paul is talking about, it's the city website. It's longbeach.gov//redistricting. And on there, you can find old maps going back to the 1970s to see how some of these lines have been drawn pretty crazy in the past, like Paul mentioned, by possibly people smoking cigars in back rooms, which is not the case. I mean, that's something that I haven't mentioned yet, that the commission that Alejandra and the rest of the, was it 13 of you, right?
Yes.
13 commissioners. It was created by a ballot measure in 2018. So this is the first time that we have residents drawing lines versus city hall and politicians by proxy. So that's important. Talking about drawing lines. So the technical part, since we mentioned the website, and Paul's going to do a little demonstration for us.
Sure.
There is a mapping tool on the website that you can go and draw lines of where you think neighborhoods that you're interested in keeping together should be kept together, and you can submit them. And Paul's going to go through that right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
As we were mentioning, there is a bunch of information, including being able to look at community of interest forms, being able to use the mapping tool. And in here, you're able to, and there's a little video here that somebody could watch as like a full tutorial. But if you go into the mapping tool, and this is just a test account, you can create a new account and it's super easy. When you go into the tool, you're able to create a new plan. And when you start a new plan, it could even either be like a new plan from scratch, or you could do a new plan based on other people's already shared plans. So if I just do a new plan from scratch and I can name it anything I want, then this is going to bring up a tool that used to be the kind of thing that only GIS professionals had access to. This is not the kind of thing that normal people would be able to utilize in the past to actually draw lines. And while it is a very, very technically competent tool, it is designed to try to make the process as easy as possible. Now, the 2 types of maps people can create would be a community of interest map, or they could use this tool to draw a full redistricting plan. Once we get all of the data in from the census, we'll definitely be encouraging people to draw full redistricting plans or draw their district or the couple districts near where they live and they have the most interest. But right now, we're really trying to get people to draw their community of interest. So if I were to go into here and let's say, draw my community of interest, I could do a couple things. Let me back out a little bit so I can see this. So first off, this zoom tool allows me to zoom in to anywhere that I have that I want to focus. There's other options here. One that will show the size of the area I've drawn, one that will show the totals for all the districts, and then one that'll show additional layers. And one of the layers that I find really valuable is looking at the neighborhoods. You can just click on that, it can show the neighborhoods. You could also click on this and look at the old district lines. So you could say, okay, well, the district lines go here, and you could draw something new. But for me right now, I'll just use the neighborhoods as a really great boundary layer to look at when you're drawing lines. And you don't really need the census blocks and all those numbers or anything like that when you're doing this. So if I go into the tool, yeah, do you have a question?
No, I was going to say, Paul, that I know it came up as a point of contention in one of the last few meetings, but the reason why the neighborhoods are broken down the way that they are is because they're tied to the independent voting tracts, right?
The census blocks.
Census
yeah.
blocks.
So the law in the ballot measure was that the city cannot split census blocks. Splitting census blocks is something that a lot of groups really abhor, because what ends up happening is, I kid you not, we're doing 3 redistrictings in different cities where the census blocks were split to make sure that 2 incumbents didn't get put in the same district. We have one city we're working in. It was a census block with 13 people in it, and it had to be split because 2 of those 13 people were city council members. So we can't split census blocks. So one of the things that we've seen as a concern was something like this census block here. See how weirdly shaped that is?
Right.
And how it crosses 2 neighborhoods. It's not trying to do anything. It's just that the census creates a census block that goes across 2 neighborhoods. There's nothing we can do to change that. So, but if I was drawing my community of interest and wanting to kind of like come up with something, let's say that I live here around Traffic Circle and I want to draw an area of my community of interest, but then I also walk my dog to the park and I want to include the park in my community of interest. You could literally create an area like this. You could clean it up by however you want, just kind of going through, adding things to it or whatever you want to do. And once you have your community of interest, you can go ahead and save it by clicking the check mark, give it a name. The name should just be something really short, and the longer name could be more information. And then once you have that, you can either print it out at your computer. That just opened up a little dialogue. You can email it to somebody. You can share it, which puts it back into that directory I was looking at before, where you could start from a shared plan. Or you could submit it to the city. And when you submit it to the city, you can put information about what your community of interest is, put your information, hit OK, and that becomes an official submission to the commission. Now, what's important is people ask, well, how's anybody going to use this? What's going to happen when we get from the community of interest meetings into line drawing is every one of these, we are going to provide PDF maps to the commission of each one of these areas with the descriptions that the community member gives. And those are going to be the new building blocks of new districts. So when we see these and we have multiple people putting in communities of interest with maps, then we have more data to use as devising how we're going to build community of interest driven redistricting plans. And the state law, like you said, is very clear that communities of interest should be drawn with those kind of criteria you said, like socioeconomic, other demographic ways that you can think of a community of interest, and that they should be included within a district in order to maximize their representative and political power.
Right.
So when we see these, the commission is going to look at them all and say, okay, well, let's try to figure out a way to draw districts that protects these areas. So it's important we get this information from the public.
And this is an important tool because you don't have to go to a meeting to draw one of these. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, or a library, or Starbucks. It might be a little hard on a phone. I'm going to tell you, I've used it a few times. It is a little sensitive. You're going to need a mouse to be able to really get in there and do a very distinct drawing. Otherwise, it's going to kind of select what it wants, and you can go back and click out of those things, but you're going to need a mouse.
No, it's amazing that 20 years ago, you needed like a Cray supercomputer to do these things. In the 90s, you'd have to go to like Warner Brothers lot and use their huge, another company I'm with, use Warner Brothers computers to be able to do this kind of manipulation and data. Now everybody thinks they can do it on an iPad, they can do it on a phone. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, a desktop computer or a computer at the library. Also, you can share it with your friends. You can draw this and not submit it, but we would love for you to submit it. But you can come in and play and share it with your friends and come up with something you agree upon, or do one of those paper maps like you showed.
So let's conclude the map tutorial. Like Paul said, there's a video on there. You can play around with it. If you don't feel comfortable using it, you can go to one of there's 2 more community outreach meetings where you can get a physical copy. You're going to get a lot of submissions, Alejandra, and there's going to be a lot of people who feel very strongly about how these lines end up. And as you've heard from public testimony already, they don't forget about the people who drew them the way that they didn't want them to be drawn. Why did you want to become a commissioner?
Because I hear them. I mean, this is why this is such a unique approach. It's the inaugural Independent Redistricting Commission, right? We are residents. Everybody seated on this commission, we are residents of Long Beach who have been impacted for the last 10 years by the last district line. So we know how it's played out. We know the history of Long Beach. A lot of us are very passionate about the city. I think all of us are. And so we want it to reflect the city. What we want to take it into consideration, what the census dictates, and also what the residents are submitting to us. I mean, I'm not under any false idea that this is going to be easy. It's going to be very, very, very difficult. I worked for the Census as an enumerator and then a field, a lead in the 2010 census collection. So I understand census blocks. I understand what happens before. And so that definitely led to my interest in serving on this commission. And just as someone who understands what redistricting means for communities, it is a form of empowerment when it's done right. And it's a form of disempowerment when it's not. And so I want to make sure that our commission approaches this in the right way, in the legal way, in the way that the charter, has dictated for us. And I want to do it right. I want to set a good guide for the next Independent Redistricting Commission in 10 years. So it's really important. I think every commissioner is very much aware of the precedent that this will set and the huge task and honor that it is to be a part of this. And we've been trained, like Paul said, by really, really good people. And we have gone through so much legal training as well to make sure that we do this the right way. And again, as residents, we know some of what we hear in those in the community of interest testimonials is not new information, right? We're from Long Beach. We know this. And so it's going to be tough. There's no way I'm not going to not give that, the importance that it needs. It's going to be a hard task for sure.
We have about, I told Paul and Alejandra I wouldn't keep them captive for more, an extended period of time past our normal 30-minute chat. So we have about 10 minutes left. If anybody watching out there wants to submit questions, you guys are free to do that. They're being relayed to me here if they come through. Paul, since I know you, Alejandra, you said you just worked for the census, but I'm not sure have you done a redistricting process? Okay, so Paul, with the short timetable, normally you have so much more time to do this, squeezing it into, well, you guys have to submit these by the end of December, right? Possibly later, if there's a challenge legally to get a waiver to submit them later, but the California Supreme Court would have to weigh in on that. How hard is it going to be to do all of this really important work in 3 months?
Well, yeah, currently the deadline could shift back, but for the local, that'll change the statewide redistricting process timeline. For the locals, it would probably require a legislative change. But the time frame is compressed, but at the same time, this commission has had plenty of time to get stood up and get to know each other, get to understand their processes. In the past, you would have data already by now. And so you'd have data, you'd have people coming to you with maps. You'd still be trying to get your training on the Brown Act, and you'd still be trying to get your commission together and figure out your process. And so all of that stuff having been done, I think puts this commission in a good place where when they actually get to the line drawing process, which will probably be around mid-October, they're not going to be worrying about any of that other stuff. And they're going to have heard from, tons of local residents about their community of interest in a way that most commissions wouldn't normally get. So a ton of work being done for an extended period of time before we're drawing maps, I think will set this commission up to be successful. There will be, there always is some crunch time at the end, especially when you're doing redistricting. Oftentimes you look at the map and you think, oh my God, there's like 100,000 different ways districts can be drawn. What's likely to happen, what normally happens in redistricting, is that there are parts of the map that become more, consensus. And then there'll be other parts of the map that become more a focus of public interest, more of the things that are vexing to the commission as to how to deal with competing communities of interest and competing criteria. Getting through that period in the last month is really, I think, what this commission is set up to do well. And I'm looking forward to it.
We have our first question. I'll ask this since it is directed toward the commission. I'll ask Alejandra. So regarding the mapping tools, like when somebody submits either it be a digital version or a physical copy of the map, like what kind of outside of the lines that are drawn, what kind of information are you guys looking for? Like, do you guys want an explanation for why this is important to the person turning it in?
Yeah, just giving us their kind of logic as to why they're drawing the lines that they did, so that we can again match it to criteria that we have set out for ourselves. Because it's, yes, the commission will finalize the map, but we have instructions we have to abide by. It's not something that we're doing out of our own personal preferences. So we will obviously make sure that whatever's being submitted is informed by the process and is abiding by the criteria. So as long as they can explain to us, what the logic is, and that they themselves hopefully are checking out our website. So we've tried to make it really transparent, and all of the tools that we received to map when it's our time are available to the community. So they can look at the criteria and try to create, like, if they're drawing like districts, Long Beach wide, then that they're trying to do them contiguously, that they're not, jumping around from one place to the next, it's kind of following along. That would be really helpful.
Right. And like Paul had mentioned, walking a dog. This is where I walk my dog to the park. You guys have a set of criteria that you guys have to follow in terms of what you consider. There's a priority list, right? So like, yes. Walking, I don't think where I walk my dog to the park's on that list. I'm pretty sure it's not, but you guys you would consider that after maybe like something like legally important, which is like, we can't split up a district of minority voters to, make somebody have their dog walking route be intact.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's, when people do give community of interest testimony, it's important that they kind of try to hit the three things, even if they're submitting a map and they're saying, this is my community. And one of them is just who they are. They're the dog walker group, right? The second is, where's their footprint? Where are they geographically? And that's what we drew in the map. The third part, which I didn't touch on when I gave the example, is how does that relate back to the city? Because a community of interest for the city redistricting should be something where they have issues before the city that may or may not be addressed. And as a dog walker, maybe it's that they don't have the little dog water fountain thing, or that they don't have safe streets, or that the street lights are broken, or that the sidewalks are cracked. And so it's important to tie that all back. And yeah, if somebody's submitting a full plan, it would be great for them to articulate how they decided to do certain things. But if somebody draws a plan that violates the Federal Voting Rights Act, or districts aren't roughly equal size within a 10% margin, then the commission can still consider what they did and thank them for their input, but it would be hard for that to become, one of the draft maps.
Right. There are rules. There are actually many rules. You guys had a whole onboarding process where you had to learn all of the rules. Yes. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up. Do you guys want to say any closing comments on the work that you guys have ahead of you in the coming months? We're all waiting for the census to drop, but until then, after the census comes out to the city, that's when the real work starts. How do you guys feel about that, the road ahead?
Yeah, I just like to say that I want to keep encouraging public participation. My heart warms every time I hear that every meeting there's a little bit more that trickles in via, the Kudo platform or in person. So I just want that momentum to continue. I believe that there will be a lot more participation once we get into the actual map drawing. That's my hope. But I definitely encourage people to submit, if you can't or would prefer to do it via email or through the mapping tool or picking up a paper copy at the local library and submitting it that way, whatever format. And please do not be discouraged by the platform or the fact that it is like public record or a very official meeting. Please don't be discouraged to participate. There's literally no judgment. We're all new to this as well. Please come as you are, share your experiences, share your community of interest, your concerns, please do so. We're definitely wanting to get all of that during this part of the process. And it's definitely going to be something that we consider again, as the laws and criteria allow, but we will definitely keep it all into consideration. So I just encourage everybody to continue to participate in the way that they can and to keep the September 8th citywide meeting in mind. If you weren't able to participate prior or you want to rally your friends to get involved, please keep that date in mind and be on the lookout on our longbeach.gov/redistricting website for any new submissions. And there's a frequently asked questions section. Just make sure that you're just on top of what's happening and look out for the trainings that will happen for the mapping portion, which will be more involved, because I know right now if you have questions, the format that we have right now doesn't really allow for a back and forth and instruction, but we will have that opportunity, and Paul's team is great, and so I'm sure that they'll help you address any questions that you might have, and the city staff will support that effort. So I'm thanking everybody that's participated so far, and I welcome new participants in the process. So thank you.
Great. Anything from you, Paul?
I would just say that, to all the voters in Long Beach and residents who passed this ballot measure, this was a grassroots effort to make sure that these commissioners were drawing lines, and it was successful, and it's a model for other cities around the state. And for those who got involved to make sure that happened or cast their vote to make sure this happened, we have about 4 months to get this process done, and the lines that were created will impact the city for 10 years. So kind of return on investment of time and energy now for the political outcomes that you want to see in your city for the next 10 years, really critical that we get people involved now.
Right. And like Paul said, it's going to have a big impact on, depending, some people are going to be very solidly in the same situations that they are, but people, depending on how these lines are drawn, you could end up in a different district. You could have a different council person. If a park leaves your district, you can still go to it.
You can still walk your dog to the park if it's in another district. Yeah.
It might be in a different district. You're not forbidden from going to the park. I've gone to parks in districts not in the one that I live in.
You are daring.
Nobody checks your ID. So if you guys want to come check this out in person, it's a hybrid model. So you can go, there's 2 more community of interest outreach meetings coming up, one on Wednesday at Houghton Park, and then the next Wednesday at Browning High School. They both start at 6:30 p.m. You can attend in person, and you can get one of the physical maps. If you don't feel comfortable doing a digital version, you can also watch on, it's kind of like Zoom, it's called Kudo. But the cool thing about these meetings is that, unlike the city council meetings, which are not taking public comments virtually, the commission is. So if you want to go and you want to have your voice heard, you don't have to go in person to give public comment. They will listen to you over the call, and you can tell them what's on your mind.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So with that, it's been about 30 minutes. I appreciate Alejandra, the chair of the Independent Redistricting Commission, and Paul Mitchell, the owner of Redistricting Partners. I almost forgot. Redistricting Partners for coming on to join us and talk about this very important issue. This is going to be archived, so we can post it on our website and watch the mapping demonstration again. But thanks everybody for watching, and thank you guys for joining us. We'll be writing more about redistricting, I'm sure, in the next 4 months. So pay attention to that too. longbeachpost.com. I'm Jason Ruiz. Have a good day.